barely remember you from B3, like 2002, 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. I swear you were in upper B and you were real clean cut, real put together. You were one of the guys that stood together as you straight pressed your shirt and did your hair before you stepped out.
Yeah.
And were you a porter or you had some job where you were out in the day room a lot, right?
I was a kitchen worker at times, and then I got a porter job for a little bit, just for a little bit. But
Oh,
I
all
was a
right.
kitchen worker, and I got to run around a lot. You know, everybody else was on lockdown because I was a other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
That was the good thing about being an other at High Desert, and there was good and bad about High Desert. But man, everyone was on lockdown all the time,
I know.
except the others. Man, you guys had all the critical positions.
Yeah, and it was part of the hustle there, you know, going to the kitchen, getting a little bit of ice or food or whatever that I can, you know, share or send out to people. So it worked out fine with that.
Yeah, absolutely. You come back after putting in your 6 hours or your 8 hours or your 14 hours, or if we're on lockdown, whatever it is, and you got your little bag of hamburger patties and your bag of ice, and you're
Yeah.
looking around because there's somebody flagging you down. He's got a book of stamps under the door right then.
Yep. Yeah, you remember that officer?
I do remember, officer. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I do.
yeah. He had me outside of three building one evening, and man, he was roughing me up over that stuff. He threw my stuff on the
Mm-hmm.
ground and shoved my face in the wall and karate chopped me in the balls
Oh
while he
yeah,
was
yeah. Oh, I
searching
know
me.
exactly what he did. He had you lean against the wall with your
Yep,
legs spread. And he came up behind you and
yep,
right, yeah. He
yep,
same thing to me. That was his move. Is he'd get you all unbalanced, leaning where you couldn't anything. And the trick
yep,
was if you could shimmy your pants a little bit and get him to drop, he'd slap pants instead of you.
yep, yep.
That
That
officer, I used him actually because I make names a little bit different. I use nom de plumes whenever I'm talking about this stuff because I don't want to tell the wrong story. I
gotcha.
realize it's a little small, but I tell the story about Frank and Johnny having an argument in the corner, and suddenly I'm getting subpoenaed or some crazy stuff. With weird stuff happens with this,
Wow.
and I called him Hooper in a story I told, but that dude turned off my water whenever I was in a cell for 3 stinking days. No water. Had my neighbor, and we ran plastic bags, two of them, and had it sealed with string at the end. And he picked up his end and poured water into it so it would pour out our end and we could
Mm,
drink because we were in that cell for 3 stinking days with no running water on lockdown.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that dude
guy.
was a piece of work.
Yeah, that guy is crazy. I heard they and eventually got him up there. Yeah,
I believe it. Yeah. There's no
yeah.
doubt that and that's the thing is you get away with 317 things, and the 318th thing you go, but I wouldn't do that, and everybody knows you did it.
Yeah. So how long were you up there in high desert then?
I got there in about 2002, which I went through Badger section. So apparently
Oh,
you and I have that in common as well.
yeah.
Because that was the reception for Northern California. I came
Wow.
out of Mendocino County. And then I got there at High Desert in 2002, and I was there until 2007, right before they flipped the yard and it turned into like a half and half or whatever the heck it turned into.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
was there right before that. I left just before things fell apart because it was obviously getting bad quick.
Yeah. I feel like I remember you as well. I'm trying to remember your cellie. He was an older guy, wasn't he? Really older guy.
I had a couple of cellies in the time you were there. I started with Blanky, the porter. We were up in 202 together. And
Okay.
that was like in 2002. And I was his celly for about 6 months. And he was a second watch porter, an older white cat. But he,
Mm-hmm.
he kept to himself. He's one of them quiet dudes. You might not notice him.
Hmm.
But then I
Okay.
moved down to 129 with Shaggy. And he was a taller white dude in on a burglary. He was a kitchen worker in the evening. So I'm sure he'd stand out.
Shaggy, I remember.
Oh, you
Yes.
know him?
Yes. I remember
That's
him
so cool. He's
because I
still
worked
in.
in the kitchen
Yeah,
as
he's
well. Yeah.
still in. I just JPay'd him an email literally yesterday. I'm putting up a GoFundMe for him to try and get a board attorney. No violence. I
Wow.
went in on a murder case, man. Like I pled down on a murder. And I met this dude. He'd been in for a couple of years. I did my whole term, got out, And I just wrote him a stinking email saying, wow, you're still in prison and you have no violence on your record. What is that?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
We knew that in there too. I remember
Mhm.
conversations like that where you were better off, catching the murder case versus a drug case or anything like that with these other guys, the strikes law.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
3 strikes is what got him. And man, that's
Yep. My cellie, he was a striker too, and all he had was a dirty bag of heroin. Nothing much in it, just dirty. They scraped it enough to
Mhm.
get a positive test, and they struck him out. Yeah, that was back then, though. Can't do that today.
It was, I believe it was Mark Kloss, Polly Kloss's grandfather, but I hate quoting impromptu because I might get the name or the relationship wrong. He said, I've had my VCR stolen and I've had my granddaughter stolen. And
Mm,
I know what the difference is. In relation to the idea that there are guys like Shaggy who's doing 25 to life still on that. And I don't think that's what the 3 strikes law was originally intended to do, was keep nonviolent burglars in prison for 40 years.
right. Yeah, that's terrible. So I'm curious. So why Mendocino County? How did you land there?
Well, I had been born here in Mendocino County, and a gentleman came to my county, and I speak about my case not a heck of a lot because I have one co-defendant, believe it or not, still in, and he had his life without reduced to 25 to life. He should parole in a year or two, and I'm trying not to say anything that contradicts anything he may
Right.
have said, if you understand that sentence,
Got you.
because it's so, whenever you have that date, how afraid you are of anything taking it away.
Yeah.
But gentleman came from Southern California to here because one of my co-defendants, August, had a pre-existing relationship with him. And the guy was looking to take pornographic pictures of children, essentially. This guy was a real piece of garbage.
Hmm.
I don't want to go into every detail, but August, Ty, and myself went out into the woods with this guy, and the three of us came back out, and the gentleman was dead. And it's always been a difficult thing whenever I was active talking about this. All anybody hears is the guy was a child pornographer.
Yeah.
And you understand because, active, everybody has their chest puffed out. We hate sex offenders. And who
Right.
doesn't? I'm not defending anything like that. But then I went SNY. I rolled up because I got just vaguely involved in the wrong thing, and I wasn't going to stay there. Once I tapped, I kept tapping until they got me the heck out of there.
Yeah.
And
Oh no, go ahead.
then you go SNY, and now I'm housed with sex offenders, rapists, real monsters, people that I don't describe their crimes because it makes me sick to think of it.
Yeah.
And it was a very different perspective to say, oh yeah, I'm in here for killing one of these people, like Frank,
Right.
Jim, and Bob over there, that thing they're in for.
Yeah. It's weird how life is like that. It's always a lesson for us, isn't it? It just always comes full circle in that kind of way. You're actually in there for taking somebody out that was doing certain things like that, and then now you end up on the same yard with these
Mhm.
type of people. That's interesting. I want to take you back a little bit. I know you don't want to talk about your case as much,
No,
but
it's okay, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, what did they eventually give you as far as time?
I ended up pleading down. As I said, I had two co-defendants, and my co-defendant who's still incarcerated, Ty
Mm,
Abreu, he's innocent. Like, just for a fact, he didn't kill anybody. He didn't know somebody was going to die. They got him on the felony murder rule. He knew that somebody was going to get robbed, and that dude died. Therefore, he committed a murder. But the thing was that whenever the police began questioning him, he had very little gumption. He had very little, I want to talk to my attorney in him. He had, tell me what I have to say to make this go away. As a result, he ended up giving a really damning confession, which was untrue. I mean, I can watch it and go, this isn't true, man. Why would you say that?
right, right.
And the logic in his head, I guess, was because he was saying, well, I didn't kill the guy. That meant that he would get less time than the other two of us. As a result, he's still doing time.
Yeah.
And whenever he got convicted, because he had his trial and we were all facing serious murder charges, death penalty, things like that. Once he was convicted, my lawyer and I agreed that I should plea down to a lesser charge, because even though they had a very weak case against me, they had no testimonial evidence, very little physical evidence. I may have beat it at the box, except that I have a co-defendant who just got convicted. He has a life without the possibility of parole. And I just don't believe he's not going to say anything. And I'm sorry, but anything for a different sentence. I get it. Yeah, I'm tapped out. And I took 19 years and 8 months for carjacking, kidnapping, and involuntary manslaughter. And it's a funny thing about the judicial system. I got 11 and a half years for carjacking, which whenever we're discussing the crime of taking somebody out in the woods and killing them, I don't understand why carjacking would be the primary thing you're concerned about.
Huh.
But it's just the way the judicial system works. They're looking for something that adds up to 20 years, basically. They said, well, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it's a violent felony. He gets 20 years. It's good enough.
Wow. So you never got the L on there?
I did not. No, I took a plea for 19 years, 8 months with a violent, and then they changed some of the sentencing rules to where I was able to have my associate's degree and things like that, and knock some time off the back end. So I got out a year early.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Made the associate's degree. You know, I'd done it years and years before, but it made it well worth it.
Right.
Can I ask when you left High Desert?
Right around the time you came, not too long after that. It was probably the end of 2002.
Oh, okay. So no one, there's very little overlap there.
Yeah, like around November, I want to say something around there.
Yeah.
Of 2002. We were actually on lockdown for that CO lady.
What was it called? The Cage Your Rage program or something like that. They came by with homework and slid it under everybody's door during the lockdown that you had to do if you wanted to be in the advanced unlock group.
Yeah, they started doing that eventually, but it was because of the CO lady that got beat up. Yeah, when I was there in building 3.
Yeah, that was still, it was still a big story whenever I got there, but it was well after it had happened. Everybody had calmed down about it. But yeah, it was a big deal whenever it happened. Shaggy told me that for a couple of days, and especially if you were the wrong group, you know, if you're the wrong racial group, but everybody for a couple of days, he said they were opening doors and just throwing trays in the cell. You want to eat, you scrape it off the floor, man. We don't even care. Somebody got hurt in this building.
Yep. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I forget the captain's name. Was it? No, it wasn't. I forget.
Captain. Absolutely. He was an alcoholic. Dude, I went out to a visit. Dude reeked of rum. I don't mean a little bit. I mean, and you smelt it and went back like, oh my God. Yeah. And he got up in my dad's face, and my face, it went on like a 2-minute conversation about how he had a hard job and people didn't understand. This was the captain on the yard, and he reeked of rum from 5 feet away. It was obvious he'd been drinking.
Oh yeah. After that actually happened, he had came into the building drunk in plain clothes and was banging on doors, yelling for the tower to open them up so he can go in and fight the guys. They had to come escort him out.
And this is funny. Like, you and I are laughing about it now, and it is funny. But for anybody who doesn't have the background of prison, you have to understand these are people that can kill you.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I guarantee you, somewhere in High Desert, if they went out and got them cadaver dogs and just followed around the perimeter, there's a buried inmate somewhere in the 20 years of this prison. It happened.
Yeah,
dude is supposed to have escaped and he got buried.
Yeah.
Similarly, that dude up in the tower where the captain's saying, hey, open the door, he has a gun and he's ready to shoot you. It is an absurd situation. It is funny. I'm laughing about it in the back. That dude was a drunk. He should not have let men.
Yeah, he was crazy, and it was a good thing that the tower was like, "Nah, I'm not going to open the door." He radioed for backup, and they had to come in and get Captain Brittle and escort.
Do you remember who the tower officer was?
No, I don't. He was it was a guy, but he was a nice guy. He wasn't really one of those guys that are yelling all the time on them.
And that most of the officers aren't that bad. That's the thing I try to express to people is, I know you have a lot of stories about guys like But
Yeah,
dude, like 80% of the officers, they
not
don't
that bad.
care. They
Yeah.
want to show up and get paid and go home. What they really want is for you to go and sit in your cell and shut up and leave them alone.
Exactly. Yeah, High Desert was a beast of its own. So you said that you had eventually ended up going to, it wasn't called PC then, right? It was called something else.
SNY is what they call it in
They changed it.
California. Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
sensitive needs yards. And I guess that, saying somebody has sensitive needs instead of protective custody is supposed to, I bet it makes them less liable. They're not protecting me. It's just that
right.
I'm sensitive.
Yeah. So I know the story because I had watched your channel, and
Hmm.
it's one of the reasons why I asked you to come on here. It's very
Hmm.
interesting. I like, your heart. That's what I'm talking about. I seen that in your
Thanks,
videos.
man. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah. So I really appreciate that story. If you don't mind telling us why you went to a sensitive needs yard
I
in
don't
High
mind in the least. And
Desert.
look, I'm really fortunate in that a lot of guys who have went to prison and then from there guys who went SNY, dude, they're
Mhm.
ashamed of that one thing that defines their life. And it's a bummer. You make a mistake, you,
Yeah,
you get into debt or you hurt the wrong person. And the whole stinking rest of your life, you're telling this story and going, but that's not me today. I swear.
yeah,
I'm lucky that I'm not ashamed. I'm not saying I'd do it again. I'm not saying it was the right choice, but I'm not ashamed of why I went to prison. I'm not ashamed of why I went SNY. And that's a blessing. You see, I had a cellie and I was not involved in any of the gang stuff. I was a generic wood. And that's basically you show up at the pen and they tell you, hey, what gang are you? And you go, I don't know. I'm not in a gang. And they go, oh, well, you're white. So you're a Peckerwood.
mhm,
Okay, what's that mean? And they explain, well, it doesn't mean anything. That's the gang you're in. Have fun.
yeah,
There's no initiation. I didn't get a tattoo showing that I was a member of the gang. It's just I can hang out on the yard. I'm a member of this generic group.
right.
My cellie, he was with it. He wanted to do things. He wanted to make his way to the shoe and be involved in the AB. And he had a pipeline. They were sending letters back and forth. He had a way of getting orders. Around this time, this is 2006, like the end of 2006, the beginning of 2007 at High Desert. They were flipping the yard. This had been a yard where, and I know you're in others, so the politics probably didn't matter that much to you,
Mhm,
but amongst the whites, this was a weird yard because it was not run by the Aryan Brotherhood. It's referred to as an FTB yard. We don't need to say what F is, but I'm pretty sure people can figure out that TB is the brand.
mhm,
And what that means is that like 3/4 or 2/3 of the active yards in California, white guys go there and they're members of the Aryan Brotherhood. This yard, that's not the case. And it's so they have someplace to send other gangs that have a problem with the Aryan Brotherhood. It's still an active yard. It's just you got guys like the Wolf Pack and the what Nazi lowriders for a while were there, but then they left. I don't know the history.
yes.
Yeah. My cellie wanted to get involved in all this, and he has some correspondence with the Aryan Brotherhood, and they want to flip this yard. All those dudes that are on FTB status, the members of the gangs that the Aryan Brotherhood doesn't like, well, there's a list. I mean, they have a bad news list, it's called. So they sent over a couple of hitters, 2 or 3 guys who arranged to get their points dropped, took their time, went over to B yard.
Mm,
They came from C or D, where it's more active. They're rocking and rolling there, and they came with marching orders. Get here, do what this dude tells you. They had a plan. The story stretches out for a little while, and it went back and forth where the shot caller on the yard, a dude I liked who was kind of laid back and easy to get along with, he got removed.
mm,
And he's SNY now. And my cellie is pushing an issue that there's a gentleman in the gym who's running with the Crips, but he's white. He appears to be Caucasian. The guy's explanation is, well, I'm Jamaican. Many Jamaicans are very pale. I'm running with these dudes. I'm not white. It's none of your business. But the skinheads have an issue with this. It's one of these things that it's a strange middle ground whether or not somebody has to run white if they're Caucasian. And they're pushing this issue. It comes to blows. The story that I heard, and this is an important sentence, the story I heard is that the Crips jumped the whites in the gym. that just without provocation, because things had been getting tense, it kicked off, and that it had been a pretty quick and pretty rough melee. A couple guys got beat down, and then it was over and the cops ran in. But you know how this goes. You need your get backs. You can't have a gang come at you and make you the victim, and then you just come out off of lockdown and shake their hand and say, sorry, you broke your knuckle on my nose, man. It's okay.
Right.
So the couple of guys that I knew over in the corner, including my cellie, who was supposed to be corresponding back and forth with the Aryan Brotherhood, come up with a plan. There's two older dudes, African Americans, and they're just a little bit off of the corner where we are. We have 4 white cells out of about 6 in the corner of A section and B section. Because it's just random what cell is what, but sometimes you end up with a clump of one group or another. And then there in the middle of those 4 white cells is a pair of elderly African-American dudes. And the only reason they stand out, the only reason maybe that I even thought about it whenever they're talking about these guys, is because they're actually old.
Right.
I remember I'd ask them every once in a while, man, which one of you has the top bunk anyway? Because they both had canes. And I guess one of them just had a cane, like it wasn't medically prescribed or whatever, but they both had canes.
Yeah.
And you know, you don't talk out of your group. I didn't spend a lot of time talking to Black folk or even Hispanics. You speak primarily to members of your ethnicity, because that's the way the beast runs. But I did have an occasion to ask them, and one of the gentlemen, I don't even remember his name at this point, he laughed. And he explained that he's been down forever, you know, like 30 years or something ridiculous like that. He doesn't care. It's worth climbing up in that top rack if his cellie is laid back and calm and quiet. You know, that he doesn't want a youngster that is out and doing and wants to shoot some dope in the corner and to do 300 burpees. He just wants to do his time.
Yeah.
Well, because these 2 dudes are a little older, they're weak, they're helpless. The plan is, whenever we come off of lockdown, or at least this is the plan they're coming up with, well, we got 3 or 4 pieces handy. We can get them over to these doors and we'll pin them down and take them out. Don't worry, Aaron, you don't have to be involved. I mean, this wasn't like they put a piece in my hand and it was my job.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, there's going to be 8 dudes bursting out at once. And the plan is to kill these men, not to hurt them, not to make a point, to end their lives. Man, I sat with that. And I don't know what else to say, but I couldn't. And it sucked, man. I didn't want to go SNY. You know, you did your time, you know, whenever you finally go, man, I tap out. Scary too, because they're killing folk in high desert. That was the thing the sergeant told me whenever he came out. He said, listen, we can't really verify much of this, but I'm sure you're telling the truth, because I don't think you're suicidal or stupid, right? And from there, they placed me in something called the placement management unit, which is, you say you want to go SNY, you say you want to go hang out with the sex offenders and the rats and the homosexuals and whoever else they put on the SNY part of the prison. Prove it. You know, we can't just let you go back 3 days after you have this change of heart. For all we know, you got 12 inches of steel hidden on your person, and you got a list of names. So it was a process. They took me back to D6, was the building they had set aside for processing guys. And it was 2/3 of a 180 building. And I was there for about 9 months until they finally decided that I was going to go to a normal SNY yard, and they transferred me to SATF.
Wow. That's a crazy story, bro. And I think that, honestly, and I'm going to be real with you, I think you did an honorable thing, because, you know, I know that when I was in high desert, it was rocking and rolling. Like I said, I came from C Yard, and I went to
C Yard is stinking crazy. Jesus. I mean, B Yard was okay as far as that goes. C Yard is insane.
Yeah, I was on C Lower for a while, and then I came to B Yard, and I noticed that there were individuals there that wanted to just do their time, including in my car. And we'd roll them out of there because of the fact that, you know, we needed more room for soldiers. And
yeah,
so,
if you're not going to fight, what are you taking that cell up for, basically? And I get it, you know.
Yep.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would see older guys like that, older black guys there, and man, I just think that would have been terrible. So I think you did a honorable thing, honestly, in
Yeah.
my opinion. I know people that went to the back to protective custody or whatever,
Hmm.
sensitive needs because of gang stuff or whatever. These are
Hmm.
solid guys. Some of these guys tired,
Yeah.
just
There
tired of
were
the
a lot
politics.
of dudes back there they had nothing. Look, there's some guys that earn their spot back there, and I don't just mean that
For
they're
sure.
a sexual deviant. And I don't just mean that they're a real rat, like, they were wearing a wire and informant and working to find a way to get out of the trouble they'd gotten themselves in. Some guys come to prison and, man, they like to rack up debt.
Mm.
Or hell, they got that mouth. They can't help every time somebody has something to say, they got something to say a little louder, a little angrier. You can earn your way back to SNY, same as you can earn your way to prison.
Yeah.
And a lot of the dudes back there, they're not bad dudes. They just made a stupid choice. It did leave me with, and I know, look, pretty much everybody, there is a visceral reaction to the idea of a sex offender,
Mhm.
rapist, pedophile. Everybody hears that and goes, "Oh God, what's wrong with that dude?" But I abided. I lived amongst these guys for a long time, and some of them
Yeah.
were not shy about what they did. The example that I've used, and I use it because it's so extreme, is the dude I knew named Coach. And I don't mean I knew him like I chopped it up with him, but he was a couple cells down. I knew who he was. That was his handle because he could have molested a team's worth of children. Coach.
Dang.
I mean, he introduced himself as this. I'm not. This is like the same way that some dude might go, "I'm Bulldog" because I chewed some dude's arm off in a fight.
Right.
Having experienced that and met some of these guys, and I hate to speak in generalities, but the idea of reform, the idea of parole, the idea of rehabilitation for some of the men that I met on that side, I'm vocal and angry about some of these dudes because they're nasty people and they need to stay behind the walls.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did they know your crime?
yeah.
Did they know your
Yes,
crime?
yes, I was open about it, and in fact, you may enjoy this. There's a rule. You understand? You can't check paperwork over on the SNY side. They'll kick
Huh.
you out over it. You can't go up and down the tiers saying, "Hey, let me see your paperwork." Like, you get to know a dude, you might say, "Hey, man, I'm going to break out my paperwork, and you can look at it, and you mind if I look at yours?" But if you just went up and down the tier checking paperwork and saying that dude over there is a this and that dude over there is a this, of course they'll kick you out for it. You're not. That'll screw up the whole program.
Right.
So what I did and what I tried to get anybody I could to do is I took my paperwork and I posted it on the outside of my locker. Never asked anybody to show me theirs, but anytime it came up, I said, "Why don't you just put yours on the outside of your locker if your stuff's good?" You don't need to ask anybody, just start telling. Pretty
Yep.
soon, all we have left is guys that don't want to talk about their case.
Yeah, that's crazy. Um, I'd like to take you a little bit back. I got a little
Yeah.
ahead, but
All right. Yeah.
so this was your first time in prison.
Yes.
Have you ever been arrested before or anything? Did any type of time?
Whenever I was a minor, I had gotten arrested for a concealed weapon. And it was just the stupidest thing where the cop made an argument out of a knife that I had because he could. And then because they dropped it with no real penalty, I pled guilty. You understand how this works whenever you're 16.
Yeah.
With that exception, no, I never had any problems with the law. And outside of smoking more marijuana than any teenager should, I didn't have any legal things. It's not like I was out there doing burglaries or even growing weed, even though Mendocino County is the place for it.
Yeah. So you didn't get in any trouble, but did you hang out with a bad crowd or were you particularly good in school? I'm just curious, you don't
I,
seem like that type of person that belongs in prison, of
eh,
course. So
I understand, and it's difficult to answer to this without expressing that in the same way with where I went SNY and look, maybe there was the smart thing to do, and then there was the thing that I had to do it or it was going to bother me the next day or the rest of my life. Dude, I got a habit for taking risks that I shouldn't and sticking my nose in business that don't belong. And then whenever things go wrong, standing up and going, but I had the right. I was in the right. And sure, that's great. But you go ahead and spend 16 years in a prison cell telling anybody that'll listen, well, I don't think I did the wrong thing. I did have friends who, look, they were fast and loose with their own personal safety, the rules, the law. And I had a line. I go, dude, I'm not comfortable with that. I'll see you later.
Mm-hmm.
But the more time that you spend bumping up in that world, for instance, my friend August, who's the gentleman that committed the crime with Ty and I told him a bunch of times, man, that thing that this dude did to you that you told me, he molested you, he raped you, I'd cut off his head. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I use those exact words, and I said it at least 5 times. So I'd take somebody and cut off their head if they did that to me or somebody I loved. And I suppose that's criminal conspiracy, but it's also the type of thing that you say whenever you're talking about that I don't want to be too explicit, but that type of violation, that type of wrong.
I understand.
And yeah, you're engaging in criminal conspiracy is what you're doing. And if it so happens that the dude that you're talking to is a little impressionable, a little, ready to go to 10, well, hell, man, you just like set yourself up for a world of hurt whenever he,
Yep.
anyway.
Oh, that's crazy. Wow. Yeah. And I could see that too, how you feel about the whole thing. So it
Mhm.
took a large chunk out of your life.
Yeah,
Man.
16 and a half years. But, it's something that I like to say is whenever I went to prison, I was mule headed, stubborn. Oh, you couldn't tell me. Oh, I don't care what you knew. I knew better.
Yeah.
And it took about 4 years of rough time. I mean, bad time to really get it through my head, that humility, that common sense that every stinking inmate learned humility, or they at least learned how to fake it long term.
Yeah.
And that lesson, that was worth 4 or 5 years, man. It really was. Because otherwise I would have been butting my head against the world for the rest of my life saying, but I'm right, dang it. Instead, I did that 4 or 5 years and it was good for me. And then I did 10 or 11 after that. And it was a stinking waste of time, man. I could have done better things with my time.
Yeah. So what was it like when you first caught this bus to prison then? I mean, it's got to be nerve-wracking, scary. What was that like for you?
I had a weird thing going to prison. And you have to understand, Mendocino County is super rural.
Hmm.
Like other counties, not all of them, I suppose, but most of them, you go to prison and you've talked to dudes that were in prison, or at least there's some structure. You have a head for what you're getting into. Man, Mendocino County, they at first they segregate. If you've ever been into prison, they have a special little pod just for you, and you don't interact with any of the other inmates, so that there's no two-way. They don't get the prison habits there in the general population. And then, since I didn't really have any friends who were inmates, and I did have uncles who were convicts, I got a whole slew of family on my mother's side that are ne'er do wells and did time. But I never talked to them about it. I didn't realize that was the path I was taking. So I went in just baffled as to what was going on, just telling myself, okay, so here's the plan. You keep your mouth shut, like really keep your mouth shut, and look for anybody who's done a lot of time and try and act like they do. You'll find the old timers and just imitate them because they've been doing it a while at least. It was that mouth shut, man. That was the best plan I could have come up with at San Quentin, Badger section, because High Desert was nasty. Badger section was insane. That was a crazy yard. And I was only there for like a month and a half. I saw one dude get, just opened up. I saw little fights, and I know there were knives all over that stinking place
Yeah.
ready to get used. That was a crazy place.
Oh yeah,
And what I
especially
do is
walking
every
up those
time I went into
stairs.
this stairs, yeah, absolutely, that's a blind spot. Or if you're on that second tier and the cops aren't on the catwalk, I mean, somebody pull you in that cell and you won't be heard from again.
Mhm.
And I remember whenever I'd go into the cell, because I didn't have a cellie for almost the whole month I was there. My cellie got taken out on the yard. Second day he went out there. It was either because he sat down and read a book on the yard and told somebody to leave him alone, which that's probably good enough, or it's because he was a sex offender and had a funny case and somebody recognized him.
Hmm.
I have no idea which. They told the one story and the other, but you know how this goes. He got beaten down on the yard, and so I didn't have a cellie for about 3 weeks out of the month and a half I was there. And every time I went back into that cell after chow or after yard, I'd say a number. How many words had I spoken? 37, 112. I counted it in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because man, you keep your mouth shut, you can't say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That worked good.
Yeah, definitely. One of the greatest piece of advice to take right there is to keep your mouth shut and eyes open. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's good advice. I don't remember where I got it, but I'm happy to pass it along. What is it they say? God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Do the math.
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, so I ended up spending 5 months in Badger section. I went to the hole twice, and yeah, that place was crazy. Yeah, and it was my first time in prison too, as well. But I had been in trouble, went to CYA and things like that. But yeah,
I bet they did the thing with you. You took your medical stuff and like they sent you to the long medical area and you had to carry your paperwork
Yep.
and go hand it to the dentist and then hand it to the psychiatrist. And
Yep.
I knew 2 white dudes. They were friends and cellies. Whenever they did that medical evaluation, they tossed their paperwork. They just went to the cop at the end and went, yeah, sure. We turned all our stuff in after having tossed it in the trash. And they'd been there for like 3 months whenever I got there. And they said, look, we have no idea how long we're going to be there. It looks like they just forgot about us because they hadn't even had the medical thing done.
That's funny. I should have did that.
Yeah, they just wanted to stay there. They say they liked each other. They liked the program. The one dude was politicking a little hard, honestly. But man, if you want to politic a little hard, Badger section's a good place to do it.
Yeah. Man, I wish I would have took that route. Instead, I stayed there. I wanted to stay there as well, but I made myself go to the hole a couple of times in order to stay there because, they take your paperwork and put it on the bottom of the stack and, you start all over to the bus list. Yeah. So
it's funny how you manipulate the system just to get by in CDC sometimes. I picked up an assault later in my term. I have an honest to God assault on my books, which is, I tell you what I did. I walked up to a dude I didn't like and I told him, I'm going to hit you now. And I did. And he like this, and I about that hard on his arm. And I told him, all right, now I hit you and I'm going to go tell the cops that I hit you and I'm going to go to the hole. And now, to be fair, this dude was older. This dude was 60 something and he had diabetes. It's not like I was going to walk up and bink him in the face to make a point. I ain't got that in me. But I needed to pick up an assault to get the 10 points because they're fixing to transfer me away from my, the prison I was, the wife, the family visits, all that stuff.
Trying to stay.
Yeah, he picked up his cane and he said one of the funniest things I've heard, man. I told him, I'm going to go tell on myself. And he said, not if I tell first. And he pushed me out of the way and ran, cane in hand. I don't know what he thought was happening, but it was such a funny sentence. I'm going to go tell on myself and they're going to take me to the hole now. You understand what's going on, man? Not if I tell first.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but it's 10 points. That's an assault, That's you don't have to hurt somebody. You just have to unsolicited violence, essentially.
So what happened? Did you go to the hole for that?
I went back because at first we went back and I behind the guy and we're both walking to the officer station and he's half running, but he's 60 something. And I'm just trying to stay close enough behind him that whenever he's about 10, 15 feet away from the cops, I can tell them, hey, you might want to slow down or they're just going to start pepper spraying whenever you say that I hit you. And he does. He stops for a second and thinks about what he's about to say. And I'm about 15 feet back, just, waiting. The cop knows me. And the guy lays out his story and the cop, he looks at me and goes, man, Channel, you're really trying to get out of this transfer, aren't you? He knows what's up. I just came back from suicide watch. I was on suicide watch. I got off suicide watch trying to get out of the transfer and then committed an assault. He knows.
Yeah.
And he puts me in handcuffs and he walks me over to the program office. And the sergeant, he's looking at it. He goes, well, this is no big deal, man. We're going to have you back in your cell in about 20 minutes. Because, the sergeant, he doesn't know everything. He's pretty low. dude, I was a clerk. I know that Title 15. Like I can right now go ahead and recite the difference between 3014 and 36. I got it. I tell him, oh, no, no, man, this is an assault. You got to send me to the hole. I'm getting a shoe term over this. And he goes, no, 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 don't worry. It's 20 minutes later. The captain comes out of his office and he goes, you're not going to believe this. And I tell him, I bet I will. I'm still sitting in that cage in my boxers. He says, man, you're getting a shoe term. I got to send you to the hole over this. And I go, yeah, that's what I'm telling you people.
You had to tell them how to do the job.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, I knew what was going to happen. It's not like the paperwork's going to process and I don't get the penalty, but they all figured that since I didn't hurt him, it was going to be a little thing, but that's not how it works. An assault is an assault. I hit him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a 3-day shoe term. They gave me a 30-day shoe, and it was suspended after 3 days once I got there because the captain came to the door and went, yeah, you're not in the shoe for this. This is stupid.
Yeah, they didn't need you back there.
But it squashed the transfer. I got my 10 points, went up to level 3, and I stayed there at SAT-F for another 2 years over that.
Yeah. Wow.
Which, nobody wants to go up to an older dude. Now, I picked somebody who was a piece of work, mind you. It's not like I drew a name out of a hat, but nobody wants to walk up to an older dude and I'm going to hit you on the arm now, brother. But, they put you in a situation where you have to manipulate the system a little bit to get by. These are my visits with my family. This is my wife and kids. What else am I going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was actually closer to home over there at SAT-F, huh? Corcoran area?
My wife had moved to Reno whenever I was transferred to Susanville because there's that straight shot. But I was unable to stay. And so that's why I really hadn't wanted to roll up whenever I did. I'd wanted to stay there. It was the last choice. But then once I went to Corcoran, she moved. She moved there to Corcoran and she stayed there with me in Corcoran for the whole time I was there. Oh, no, I have a unicorn of a wife. She stayed with me for 16 and a half years. We'd been together for 5 years before I got arrested, childhood sweethearts. And we've been together since. I mean, we got over 20 years married at this point.
Wow.
Oh, we got, God, like 25 years since we started dating. Do that stinking math.
That's beautiful, man. God bless her heart, man. Real talk.
Yeah, I'm truly blessed in that.
Yeah.
I can complain that life kind of gave me a 1-2 with prison. I was not ready for that, but hey, scales are balanced. A little bit bad, a little bit good, and I got some real good in my life.
Yeah, and that's the thing about prison. It's really good that you have some kind of support, whether it's a wife or mom, dad, someone visiting you, someone making you feel that you got something to come home to or something to look forward to. Because a lot of those guys in there, they don't have no hope. They can't see past tomorrow. They're just stuck and very lost. And so that's good you had that in your life. I had that as well. So I know what that's
wonderful.
like.
It keeps you grounded.
Yes, most definitely. And it kept me out of trouble as well.
Well, and I know some people say it's easiest to do time if you don't have anybody, if you have no visits and no letters. And I get it because you can just sink into prison. Mm-hmm. If you're not worried about whenever you get out, if you're just doing the convict life and thinking convict thoughts all day, it does make some things easier, man. There were weeks where not getting a visit ruined my week. And I'm sure you understand, like you go on lockdown right whenever you thought you were going to have that visit. Mm-hmm. It ruined your week. It's a bummer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In some ways, it can be easier just to be a convict and do time. But if you're doing real time, a decade, 15, 20 years, man, what's left after 20 years of not doing anything but prison? You didn't want to think about the streets. You didn't want to think about your family.
Yeah.
Well, okay, man. Good luck fitting in out here, being happy out here. You did right. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you brought that up too, because I was going to ask you that. You spent how long in there again?
16 and a half years. I fell in October of 2001, just before September 11th, and I paroled in March of 2018.
That's a very long time. And
that's a grip.
And so what you're saying just a moment ago, how has that affected you, those 16 years of prison and coming home? How about you? How is your experience with that, like coming home and dealing with it?
That's a good question, and it's difficult to answer because prison, it really feels like there is just this line drawn in your life where your life stopped. You were living one life and you remember getting arrested, and then however long it was, 6 months, 6 years, you get out and everything else has changed and moved on. You haven't in some ways. I realize it's tried or cliche, but whenever I paroled, I really, to some degree, expected to get out and have the world be the same it was when I'd been arrested. Ooh, things change. And you have to kind of hit the ground running as far as that goes. There's a real temptation to just try and be the guy you were before you got arrested. Maybe even find your old friends, your old environment, slide back into that life. But if you're not careful, you can make those same dang mistakes that got you sent to prison in the first place. Generally speaking, guys who go to prison, they weren't making the right choices in the weeks or months before they went there. I've adjusted reasonably well. There are still some things. I'm straight institutionalized. I got that PTSD, and it's 100 things. And I'm sure that if I listed them, about 80 of them, you'd go, oh, yeah, that. And the other 20 would be things that wouldn't make sense to anybody but me, because you get your own little, things in prison. The thing is, prison really teaches you to wait, man. You get really good at just waiting to have served your sentence, waiting to finish paying your debt to society, I guess they say. And that's good because it's what you have to do in prison, but then you get out and it is not a valuable skill. In fact, it's just sitting there. I find myself a lot of the time kind of just sitting there thinking about life. And I think it's something that just about anybody who did real time occasionally has somebody ask them, what are you doing, man? You're just sitting there. Go, well, I don't know. I spent 16 years just sitting there. I got really good at
it. Wow. Yeah, man. It's just it's so crazy, because the reason why I asked you that, because I never seen no one, get stabbed in their neck 20 times or whatever, in their face and all that. And I didn't see people killed all the time. So when I got to High Desert, it was just crazy. And even, San Quentin and so on. But it was just crazy to see this type of violence. And coming home, it's like, I realized the PTSD there. It just, so I was wondering how you felt about that too, as well, by not doing time before or anything like that. That was your first experience as well. Yeah. So, yeah. Well,
there's a psychological there's a psychological phenomenon called compartmentalization, where whenever you can't deal with something, or maybe it's just not convenient, you make a little box and you put the memory or the experience in that box, and I'll deal with it later. I'll deal with it when I can. Man, you get out of prison and those little boxes are taking up your whole mental closet.
Wow. So what do you do to just get by every day? I mean, do you, like, you have these thoughts or whatever? Do you meditate? Do you work? Do you work out? Do you, what kind of thing you do? Because there's a lot of people who watch and they deal with these problems every day. And a lot of them really are having a hard time, the people that I'm speaking with. And I speak with you, you seem like you've got it well together, so just curious on what it is that you practice.
Honest answer, I seem like I have it put together because I'm seeming like I have it put together, man. Life is hard, and that's not just me, that's everybody. I think somebody wrote, most Englishmen live lives of quiet desperation. I don't know about the Englishmen, but I think at least everybody who's went through some trauma, man, the whole rest of your life, you're pretending you're all right, at least some of the time. But there are things that you can do and that I do to, help stabilize. And, you said some of them. It's that meditation, staying active. You've heard idle hands are the devil's plaything. It's really true, man, that if you just sit and think, well, heck, the best you're going to get is all you did was sit and think. That's the best case scenario. On the other hand, you get up and do something. all those guys, whenever we were locked up, that had their crazy craft projects. I think back to guys that made models out of copper wire or purses out of potato chip bags or giant paper mache models out of just paper and salt and whatever the heck they were using.
Yeah.
They kept busy. And yeah, that is the long and the short answer, because if you stay busy with productive and good stuff, well, at the end of the day, even if you were miserable and even if you don't have it together, well, you were busy and you were productive and you did good stuff. So tomorrow you can still be miserable and still not have it together, but at least you'll be that guy doing productive, good stuff. That's the best answer I have on how to keep it together is fake it till you make it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because eventually it just becomes habit, and it becomes,
Mhm.
something that's natural to you after a while. Yep. So, yeah, I was just curious about that because people like you who haven't experienced that. I've interviewed a couple of people who haven't gone through that, and they're having a hard time dealing with
Mhm.
the many years. But
Yeah.
like for me personally, yeah, that's what I've done. I've learned to meditate. I've learned to stay
Mhm.
busy, active. It helps to get back in the old program, burpees, things like that, just to get me so tired and that I don't think
Mhm.
negative anymore, get me through the day.
Can
Yeah.
you do the burpees, man? My wrists, I can't. I try and fall into it. I've got little push-up things that I use now. I thought I had them with an arm's reach. I was going to hold them up. I need something to fall into, or else my wrists just give out on me. Burpees is a young man's game.
Man, yeah, I'm 45 now. I feel it in my back and my knees
Yeah,
mostly. Yeah, but I could still get down a little bit.
yeah.
So,
Hey,
go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I was just going to say the burpees, really, that was a heart check as much as anything else. It wasn't even about getting strong, as it was about watch the dude do 100 burpees and see who he is whenever his heart and lungs are done. If he gets up and shakes her hand or he wants to go drink some water and play a game of cards or something, he's all right. But if about 80 in, he starts, whining and griping and screw you, I don't wanna. Well, you know something about the dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Prison, how much of it you think is mental in there?
That's a tough answer, but a hell of a lot. I mean, I got fortunate in that I'm a pretty big guy. Like I got back problems now, so I kind of hunch, but I'm at least six, pushing 6'1", and I weighed 200 pounds or whatever the hell it was. It's not like I'm a giant. There's dudes there that dwarf me. But if you're bigger than average, at least, well, that means that on average you have fewer problems.
Hmm.
Some dudes did not have that option. You saw some little guys who were scrappers.
Yeah.
And I guess that's another way to assert yourself whenever you're trying to prove you have your territory, you have your space, and you need to defend it or people are going to take it from you. And it's a very primal thing, but I think that everybody, even guys who haven't been to prison, understand this idea. You lock 200 dudes into a little building that for 200 people, that's a little building. And then you tell them, all right, guys, figure it out. Well, the guys who are going to end up getting stepped on are the ones who are not willing to defend what is theirs. That's just common sense.
Yeah. Most definitely. So tell me, what was your whole takeaway when you got out of prison? Well, actually, tell me exactly what that feeling was like when you finally was approaching that time, maybe a week before getting out. What were you feeling at this time?
Well, unfortunately, and it was way before I got pulled off my rack by somebody who was picking a fight with me in 2011, 2012. It messed up my back a little bit. I'd always had a plan. Whenever I got out, I was going to do the Willy Wonka thing because I had a cane at one point. And you remember this movie and the old Gene Wilder Willy Wonka where he's
Yeah,
hobbling along, pretending, and then the cane catches and he falls. I could do that somersault clean. I practiced it.
that's funny.
And that was my plan for whenever my wife and my mother picked me up was to there. And I ended up injuring myself just a month or two for real before
Oh,
I paroled. And so it was a situation where it really looked like I was setting up the joke. But, it's just that I had taken a little fall and I wasn't doing so great walking. And that really took up a lot of, it's the little thing that you had a plan of and it goes wrong. That
Yeah.
really took up a lot of my focus in the month until I paroled, trying to figure out if I was going to be able to do my dumb joke or not. I
You may,
was,
you might have manifested that.
I may have.
uh,
Of
Hilarious.
course, I was fortunate in that I had a support network to fall into. I've said my wife and I are childhood sweethearts. I had two young boys that were conceived during family visiting.
Mm,
My mother is, she's a gem of a woman, and she stood by me my entire incarceration. And my family isn't wealthy by any means, but we're not so poor that I had to start working as soon as I got out. I had the luxury of being able to say, hey, I'd like to just take a couple of months and recover from prison.
yeah.
And that is a real luxury, especially whenever it comes with, a home and food and a family. A lot of guys don't have. You see a lot of guys parole and just to nothing. The shelter, what homeless shelter are you paroling to?
Mm. So when you got out, when did you get out? What year did you get out?
I paroled in 2018 on March 30th, I believe, right before April 1st. That was another running joke was,
Wow.
April Fool's Day.
Yeah. Wow. I could just imagine you walking out the gate. So you paroled from Corcoran?
I paroled from Chowchilla,
Oh,
actually,
really?
which whenever they flipped it over to be a man's prison, I was there for the last, 8 months of my sentence or so. And I did some time in Chino before that also. It
Okay.
bounced me around a little.
Yeah, yeah. So you were pretty far
Chowchilla
away.
was a nice man. That was a nice place to do time. I wish I could have started there. They had a dog program. Guys were training dogs on the yard.
I heard those women's prisons, they had trees and everything inside the compound.
Chino even, which was
Okay.
always a men's prison, they
Yeah.
had trees and cats, feral cats on the yard. You could just go
I've
ahead and
never
like they
seen
had big
that.
long dorms. Yeah, you could take a can of tuna and leave it out, and the cat would come and eat it.
Wow.
Yeah,
I've never seen nothing like that before.
yeah.
So you got out. Did you do the flip? Well, you at least went and got something good to eat, right?
Whenever I got out, my wife had a great. I don't even know where it came from, but from a restaurant like the night before, they went and got a lasagna,
Mm,
and so that was at the hotel room they'd stayed at, and she heated it up. And then, of course, the meal that actually counts, that everybody has their meal they're going to have when they get out. It's the thing you think about. And of course, it was a steak, I mean, a nice, rare, good steak. I think we went to Tahoe Joe's or some random
okay.
steakhouse. And yeah, huh? Oh my God, that was the best steak of my life.
What was that feeling like sitting in a crowded restaurant for the first time in
uh,
so long?
Oh, it's tense, man. It's that hypervigilance. You're looking around and you're assessing everybody. Like, first off, well, where am I in the restaurant? Where are the doors? Is there people behind me? Is my back to a wall? And then you start looking around like, okay, what are people talking about?
Mm,
Why'd that guy get up so fast? Where's he going? Oh, guy dropped his silverware. And then as you're doing that, you realize that your family's, they're looking at you like you're a crazy person. And then you look at them like, what do you guys aren't keeping point? Something might happen. I'm being a little glib, but it really is. It's such a change in environment and perspective. And you never do shed it. I mean, you and I guarantee you, I know, I don't know you from Adam, but you and I can go into a Denny's tomorrow. And there are 6 different things that we would do whenever we sat down that screamed prison chow hall. I take my napkin, I fold it up in a little square, and I put it under my plate so I know right where it is.
where it is.
That's just me. Not everybody does that,
Mm,
but or whenever you're almost done with your food, you look around a little and
yep.
to let everybody know that you're done. There's 100 habits you pick up with eating in prison
Yeah.
that you never shed, I don't think.
Yeah. Most definitely. How difficult has it been for you, transitioning into society, getting a job, or, just dealing with the town, people around you? How has that
Um,
been?
well, I lived in Mendocino County in Fort Bragg, and my case was big publicity where it is here. I mean, we have very few murders in a year, like maybe 2 or 3 in a given year, if. And you can imagine we have no murders where the guy is tied to a tree and purportedly tortured. That is a really extreme kind of thing. It made the newspapers here locally, and people talked about it. To the point, actually, that whenever I was in county jail, I was infamous. I had my boy Fester one time actually pushed somebody out of my cell because they had walked in there to watch me sleep. I can't explain to you exactly what the logic was here.
Hmm.
But dude was straight watching me sleep. And then whenever my boy started pushing me, hey, is that the guy? Is that the... After that type of publicity, you are known to some degree. I do occasionally run into somebody in my small community who knows who I am. And because there was an element of, I don't know how to express it without sounding a little bitter, but I was framed a little. Law enforcement was involved here. There was evidence was manufactured.
Yes.
I'm not complaining. I'm not rehashing old things, but it makes it scary to come back to Mendocino County because you do that math in your head. Well, I don't even know who did that. I don't know if they're still wearing a badge, and I don't know how they feel about. So while I was on parole, I actually stayed in Nevada, in Reno, and I had my parole transferred to Reno. I got my restitution paid off, so they'd let me. Boy, that's a thing. But doing my parole in Reno was much better, laid back. And then once I discharged, I transferred everything to California and moved back here to California because you can get that what's the certificate of discharge once you finish your parole here, and you don't get in trouble for like 4 years or 5 years. It's if you live in another state, it's forever. It's like 20 years or something ridiculous. But if you live in California, it's just a couple of years of maintaining. And they give you a form called a certificate of rehabilitation that says that you are no longer a convict, basically. Your criminal history doesn't mean as much. Mm-hmm. Good thing to have.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want that, right?
Right. Yeah. How long you been off parole now?
There's some ambiguity there because I never got my discharge papers.
Oh, wow.
I had been scheduled to come off of parole in November of 2021. And so since I'm past that point, I don't even worry about it anymore. But they called me in April of 2021 and said, hey, you're off parole. I mean, it was so brief. We've evaluated your case. You're off parole. Have a nice day. And I had just enough time to get in and go, hey, wait, can I get something in writing? And my parole officer went, well, you'll have to get in contact with California about that. That's not my department.
Wow.
So I was in this strange situation of I've transferred my residency to California. My ID says California. I still don't have a discharge paper saying that I'm allowed to leave Nevada. Well, I don't imagine that there's any problem with that, though, because, again, I was scheduled to come off in November of 2021, and they can't extend past that point without notifying you.
Right. Yeah, the same thing happened to me as well. There's just a phone call, and I think I didn't get an actual piece of card until maybe 5 months later. Yeah. So.
And it's not the end of the world because the only way that parole impacted me was travel, being able to come to and from California, Nevada. You know, I mean, that is a pill, having to go in and put in a form to travel. And then you get worried like, well, what if my bus breaks down? Are you guys going to violate me because I'm late getting home?
Right.
And I know that it's not a practical concern. It's absurd, those little things. Like, what if I give a urine test and it comes out dirty, even though I'm clean? The odds of that are like 1 in 10,000, but heck yes, every time you go to the parole office, you think that. Yeah, because you don't want to go back to prison. Who the hell does? And yes, things go wrong.
Yeah, I remember when I got out, I kept thinking they were going to come take me back at any moment. Yeah, I know the feeling.
There was one occasion where I was getting my boys ready for school, and 2 cop cars came pulling up like fast, squealed the tires just a little, you know, and they're on either side of the driveway to my home, and they came leaping out of their cars. There was 4 officers, 2 in either car. And I had been standing at the door. I had the door open whenever the cops came into view, and then they pulled into the house. And I put my boy back in the door, and I'm literally turning around to yell at my wife, "Honey, I'm going back." I mean, I don't even know what's going on. I just know what this is. They're coming to get me. And there was somebody who they were arresting. They wanted to sneak up on their house. They were about 3 houses down. And so they had done that, and they all 4 got out and started running real fast towards this dude's house. But it
That's
was a surreal moment where I had committed no crime, like literally none. There is no reason that the police would have a problem with me. And I was leaning over to yell at my wife, "Honey, I'm going back to prison," because that's what it means when the cops show up.
that's the way you really feel. I mean,
Oh,
it's that PTSD.
PTSD. You are correct, man, and
Yep.
it's insidious. You don't even notice it 9/10 of the time.
No,
But
no.
then you do something, some little thing. I met some dude at a bus stop a year or two ago, and I was just getting on the bus, and he was slung back. I know he did time. He does not know I did time because I look a little differently. But he happens to bring it up at random. We're talking, waiting for the bus. It's going to be 10 minutes, and he mentions that he's going to a job interview, and it's hard to get a job since he got out of prison or something like that. And I tell him, "Oh yeah, no kidding. I did time too in California." And he's heard of high desert, and he does not believe me. I don't have I don't have the demeanor.
Mhm.
And he's very skeptical. He goes, "Yeah, all right, man, whatever, And then I drop something at one point. And that whenever you drop something is you take a step back and you lean in from the bent waist and pick it up
Yep.
with your head up,
Mhm.
so you can step back
Yep.
if you have to, if somebody comes in.
Mhm.
And I did that, and he was about 10 feet away from me, saw that, he just started laughing. He went, "Okay, man, never mind. I know that move." Because it's the small habit that you picked up when you were doing time. It's a matter of personal safety. Of course, you don't turn your face all the way to the ground and shut out the world to pick out the thing you picked up. The guy behind you might think that's the perfect opportunity to.
Mhm. Yep, definitely. So, you have a YouTube channel,
I
and
do.
yes, and you share a lot of your stories on there. Those of you guys that don't know about his YouTube channel, I will put his YouTube channel in the description, you guys. But
Mhm.
Aaron, with this YouTube channel, same with me, I've seen that you use it as an outlet. How's that going for you? I mean, has that really helped you a lot, to be able to share your stories and talk about the things you've been through on your YouTube channel?
The best therapy I could have paid for. I I don't know how else to express it. I am blessed that I'm a reasonably good speaker. Whenever I talk, it's a little bit more mellifluous than usual, or perhaps just I know how to string the words together right. But people are willing to listen to the things I'm saying. And that's just a wonderful gift because it means I can talk about prison and people are interested to hear what I have to say. And speaking about it has prevented me from doing the thing that everybody does. And you know the story, you heard it 100 times. My boy said he was going to write me when he got out, but he didn't. My friend said he was going to fill in the blank, but he didn't. Because you get out of prison and man, you just wall it off in a little box of traumatic experiences and you put it in the back of your head and you don't want to think about it ever again. Yeah, your friend that was you were ride or die with, yeah, you forget about him because you don't want to think about all the other stuff that happened along with that friend. And this hasn't allowed me to do that. I don't get to keep all my experiences in a nice locked box in the back of my head. I got to, take it out and set it out and start looking at, oh, that is what happened.
Hmm.
Polishing up those experiences, as it were, and remembering them. So I think that it's helped me deal with that post-traumatic stress disorder, that hypervigilance. And it's also helped me be true to who I wanted to be whenever I was locked up, because you spend a lot of time promising yourself, I'm not going to waste the time when I get out. I'm not just going to get out and do dumb stuff. I'm going to treasure the time with my family. I'm not just going to sit there and watch movies and play video games all day long. I'm going to make a difference in the world. because you're locked in that little room, and that is the real thing they tell you is you can't make a difference anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We built this whole prison, this whole thing in this little concrete box to put you in it because you are bad for the world. And we want to keep you here because any influence you could have is negative. That's the whole point of prison is we don't want you interacting with the free world anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You get out and you have this beautiful, this magical opportunity to all those promises you made to yourself. You get to keep them or lie to yourself about it and not keep them. Those are your choices. This has been the best therapy it could be because it requires me to take that little box of promises and memories, open it up and dig through it every once in a while.
So if you had one wish, you know, about your channel and what you're trying to do to get across to people, what would your wish be to accomplish or to get through to people? I mean, with this whole thing that you're doing now, your YouTube channel, sharing your stories, what is the end result that you really would like to see by you doing this?
If I get my druthers, and mind you, to some degree, this is establishing an audience as much as anything else. You start talking, and you do it just because you have something to say, and then one day you realize there's a couple of people listening, and so you keep talking because why wouldn't you? And then all of a sudden, there's enough people listening that what you say matters. You're not just picking any random stuff. You're trying to think about what you should say rather than what you feel like saying. If I have my druthers, I would really like to draw attention to cases of people that, gosh, it's absurd. My Sally, Shaggy, and you remember the guy at least a little bit. Dude, Brandon Mays, that's Mays, E38383 is his CDC number, and I'm going to set up a GoFundMe for this dude. It's not set up yet. He's trying to get out, and he should. He's done 28 years on a burglary at this point. I pled down on a murder case, met him 4 years into his term, paroled 15 years later, and just wrote him a letter. Gosh, I'm sorry you're still in prison. That is stupid. And so if I get to talk, yeah, that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to be talking about guys whose cases should be heard. These things are not reasonable, rational, or just. Another one is Shane Goldsby. I've talked about him a couple of times. I don't know if you're familiar with the case, but there was an elderly gentleman named Robert Munger who had brutally abused Shane's younger sister. The girl was 10 at the time. I don't need to go into detail, but I hope that saying brutally abused is sufficient to make clear that whenever they sold Shane Goldsby, age 24, and Robert Munger, age 70, up together, and Munger went, hey, dude, I'm sorry about molesting your sister. My bad. Shane went to the dang cops and told them, man, you got to get me out of here. I can't be celled up with this dude. And they told him they'd get to it. Sat out in the day room with this dude. And eventually he put boots to him. He killed the old man. And I've talked about this case a bunch of times because he got 24 years on that. And for an institutional homicide where you have, look, I'm not saying anybody deserves to get beat or murdered, but for an institutional homicide happening behind prison walls and something like that, where the guy went to the cops and said, I don't want to be here, dude, 24 years is broken off 3 times over. That is an incredible sentence. Cases like that, and I'm trying to, have the little mental lockbox of ones that I try to talk about whenever I have an opportunity. That's what I'm gonna do with my voice for as long as anybody feels like listening, and for as long as I'm entertaining and elucidating enough, edifying enough, excuse me, to be interesting.
I like it. So with this guy, you said you and I both know the system set him up. Those cops set him up.
Oh no, that's what happened. Shane Goldsby, absolutely.
Yeah.
The reason he was in jail, hold on, let me tell you the reason he's in jail.
Sure.
And I'm going to end up laughing a little bit. You're not supposed to laugh about crime, but dude was questioned in connection to another crime, ran away from the cops, ran back, stole their squad car, and then engaged in a high-speed pursuit down a freeway or something like that. Nobody was injured. It wasn't the end of the world, but he went to prison for that. And
Mm.
then while in prison ended up celled up with the dude that had molested his little sister. Yeah, you think maybe they were making a point putting those two dudes together. And you can even hear the officers talking about it like, well, we're just going to solve two problems. It's a win-win for them. They have nothing to lose. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's sad.
That's one of my cases. Dude's name is Shane Goldsby. That's Shane. And man, people should be paying attention to his case. I yelled about it for as long as I could. You know how it is. Nobody cares. And then you bring it up again, and maybe eventually people listen.
Yeah. Man, that is crazy. And I hope you guys understand what Aaron is saying here, man, how it's a win-win situation for them. Meaning it's job security, you guys. As long as he's there, they get somebody to watch over, they get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this man went in there on a high-speed chase, a stolen vehicle chase, and now he's serving 20 something years for murder.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh yeah,
institutional
absolutely.
murder. Yeah, it's sad. And that's why I tell you guys all the time to stay out of trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does happen where somebody can. A matter of fact, I guess this is after you went, but I remember whenever I was at High Desert, dude had a soft check coming. You understand? I don't remember what it was. He mouthed off wrong, or maybe he wasn't coming. But I mean, it wasn't even a big thing. It's like everybody knew whenever we're walking to chow, dude's going to get dinked a couple of times, just as a straighten up and fly right kind of warning. One dude, raised his hand. Yeah, I'll do it. No problem. He's my friend. And you understand this logic. Nobody else will. He's my friend. So I'll be the guy that goes and punches him in the face.
Hmm.
Because if he's your enemy, he might swing for the fences, really hurt the dude. I've said this same thing. Well, he's my friend. So I'll be the guy that goes and hits him in the face. Too much. He hit him too hard out there walking to chow, and dude just fell over and cracked his dome on the pavement. I thought he was dead. I looked at my cellie I was walking with and said, "Oh my God, that man just died," because he cracked his dome serious. Apparently, he lived, and the reason that I know he lived is because the other guy was charged with GBI instead of attempted murder or murder. But this is his friend, man. And, the good dude came in with just a couple of years and was performing a soft check. And now he's got a shoe term. He's got another 3 years in the system. And how much you want to bet he can pick up another 3 years if he wants to.
Back there, yeah. Anything.
That is how the system works is you come in and you just start that life term with thinking you're doing 5 years.
Crazy. Yeah. So you heard it. You can check him out on this platform, YouTube here. I'll leave it in the description. That's pretty much it, Aaron. If there's anything else you want to share or not, we're good. I'm
We're
happy to
good,
have you
man.
on this.
This was a lot of fun, man. This really
Yeah.
was. Like kind of chopping it up, and that we have just a little bit of shared memory, and it's the weirdest thing.
Yeah. No, it was really good. And I
All
appreciate
right.
having you on. You guys know what it
Yeah.
is. As I always say, stay the fuck out of trouble.